Hey everyone, I'm Matthias, and today we're going to do an introduction course on Photoshop. I know a lot of you guys don't really know how Photoshop works, so I'll give you a quick tour and some basic features and functions of Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop 2017, and my layout is a little bit different, but I'll get into that in a second. But for the most part, 2017 and 18 are pretty much the same, just some minor differences. So we're going to start off with going over the basic layout of Photoshop. So once you opened Photoshop, you can see this screen before you. There might be already a screen in front of you looking something like this, but that's just the formatting you'll be using and like how big your picture is going to be and what size it's going to be and all other settings. So first of all, we're going to the most basic one. So let's go to the default one and wait just a second, I can really find it, but it's okay if you just pick one, and we're going to use it in portrait. So next up we're going to create the project, and that's going to open the screen for you. So first of all, I'll go over the layout a little bit of Photoshop. My layout will look a little bit different than yours, probably, but that's because it's set to my priorities. Here is the tab window, and you can select all kinds of settings and features you want to see. Like all of these tabs are all custom set. You can move them around by shoving them like this. For example, now it's here and now it's back in this layer. Same with these, and you can also put them to the other side if you want to, but most important ones are these over here. So let's start with creating our first Photoshop project. So now you already have your blank page before you, and we're going to go over a little bit of the features here. So I'm gonna start with importing a picture I got from the internet. So this picture I took from the internet from a site named Pixabay. It gives you royalty-free pictures, and it's very good because you know that they're not copyrighted. So we're gonna put this picture in by just sliding it in like this, and then the picture is loaded in. Now it's still in a sort of loading in mode, so you can still move it around and kind of decide where you want to put it, but we're going to put him right here. So as you can see, his format changes, but if you don't want that to happen, you can click here on the link icon. That will lock the format for you, so it doesn't change any the length and the height doesn't change anymore. So that's our first picture we're going to load in. Then we're going to press enter, so the picture is loaded in, and the next picture we're going to take, if we can see here, if we go to our photos, is the one I took on a trip. That's one of my own pictures, just perfect for this kind of tutorial. I'm also just going to put it in through sliding. So this picture is already formatted the way I wanted to, so I'm just going to press enter. And as you can see, the layers is something really important in Photoshop. If you're not used to using layers, it's gonna be pretty hard at first, but trust me, you're gonna have a, a lot harder time when you don't work in layers, because when you work in layers you can change where you want to put a certain character, or where you want to select something, and that creates a very nice interface. So as you can see, I clicked the first tool here, which is the move tool. This one is used to move around people. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then the second one is the select. This one I use a lot for free transforming. So when you right click an image and I'll get back to the select tool and select the image underneath, because as you can see here, there's a slight border in the image. We're gonna select this one and select the free transform tool, because we want to get that slight border away, and we're gonna do that by making the picture a little bit bigger, and again selecting the link tool so the format stays the same. So then we're going to press enter. Next up, we're going to go to one of the most important tools which you will be using when implementing pictures, which is the quick select. So I'm just gonna show you what happens when you use it. So I got back to my person layer, and then I selected my quick select tool, and if I click, it selects a whole person at once, which is pretty easy for making quick selections, hence the name. And as you can see, this part isn't selected yet, so that's because of the tolerance. The tolerance is a way of differentiating colors. So for example, these two colors might look the same to you, but apparently they aren't the same, and I set my tolerance to 5, so we're going to put it a little bit higher, to 20 or 25 maybe. And if you select it again, you can see that the tolerance is much higher, and it even selected part of his t-shirt. So if we click again, it deselects again. So we're going to put it on 20, for example, because you just have to play a bit with it. 15 maybe. And yeah, as you can see, now it's pretty well selected. So then we're going to delete the selection. So this error shows up, which means that the picture is still a picture, but we don't want it to be a picture anymore. So we're going to use the paint tool and click on the picture and it's going to change the picture to a normal image instead of a smart object. This way you can change the format of the image, and also apply a duplicating tool, which we'll be going into a bit later. So then we're going to delete this background, and we're gonna click it again, and as you can see, this part didn't go with it, so we're also gonna delete that. As you can see, it took part of the t-shirt with it, and that's where the history tab comes in. You can click it and go back a step, or just use Ctrl Z if you're quick, but that only goes back one step at a time. For example, when you want to go back multiple steps, you can use this tool to go back another step. So we're gonna deselect it again, change the tolerance, collect the quick select, change the tolerance again because it's still a bit off, and then it's pretty well selected, so we're gonna delete it. So that's basically the quick select tool. So now we're gonna see that part of the image also didn't get selected, and this part we're gonna do with the eraser, because it's a bit more easy than a quick select tool, especially when you're working with these kind of blobs. And when clicking on the eraser and right clicking on the screen, you can see the size and the hardness. Here the hardness is set to 0, and this makes the feather, so the hardness of the eraser, pretty low. So we're gonna put it all the way up, and so don't forget to deselect your quick select tool again, because otherwise you won't be able to edit anything out of the selection. So you want to go to the eraser and then erase the part around him. Another way of cutting out a person's body and parts you don't want to is with the pen tool. This is probably the most used tool for professionals, but for beginners it's not that easy to use, because it's pretty advanced, and you have to know how it works. So as you can see, I'm working here on tracing around his boots by clicking and then dragging, and as you can see, the layer, the wire gets transformed in a way, and that creates kind of a selection around his feet. So as you can see, there's a small wire around his feet, which I'm creating right now. And as you can see, these are this is the white part we want to get away, so we're gonna just select around the part we want to get away, and then we're gonna close the loop. And so now we basically created a selection, but we just have to click one more right click, and click make selection. So then you get this screen with other tolerances, which you don't really have to worry about right now, and then you also get the same selection. You also just want to press delete, and as you can see, the whole selection, the thing you selected, is gone. Then we want to go to select and deselect everything, so everything's deselected. And as you can see, our guy is pretty much fully cut out right now. And I picked this background because I wanted to put him right in the middle of the street, just for fun, so as if he was posing in the middle of the street. So I'm gonna put him here. Then I'm gonna click the select tool again and right click, and free transform again, so that I can move him around. I'm gonna click the link tool so it doesn't get deformed, and then we're gonna put them down right here and enter. And so now it looks pretty realistic. I know it's not that realistic, but it's just to show you guys basic functions. So next up, we're gonna use one of my favorite tools, and we're gonna use it on the other layer, the picture in the background. And again, we don't want the picture to be an object. We want it to be a picture. So we're gonna click the painting tool and click it, and then the smart object will transform to a normal image that you can edit. So then we're going to use the stamp tool, and as the word suggests, it duplicates parts of what you selected. So it's pretty hard to explain, but if I'll show you in a minute. So okay, so this is an error because I didn't select anything yet. So the way it works, for example, I want to get rid of this car, which is pretty normal because it's like a pretty random car in the middle of the street. Then as you can see, the street is right here, and I want the same street here that is here over here. So what we're going to do is press Alt and then click what we want to duplicate, and then go over the object we want to duplicate. So as you can see, the image that was right here is now getting duplicated over here. So this is part where you want to play somewhat with the selection, and always press Alt. For example, I want to press Alt here right now because this part looks a little bit better. Now I want something right over here, and for example I want more over here, and like that you want to remove the whole car. So the whole car is essentially gone. So I'm going to do this right now for a second, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so like 1 minute later I removed the car. As you can see, it's all gone. It looks a bit quirky and I could have done a better job, but it's just to show in this video. I could also remove this car if I wanted to, but I'm not gonna. So next up, our tutorial is almost done. We just want to give the guy a shadow, because it looks pretty weird otherwise. And here we want to get some technical sun lighting in. So you want to think about where the sun hits, and it's right over here somewhere. So we want to create a small little shadow over here. So what we're going to do is create another layer by clicking this button over here. So now we have a new layer, and we're going to just do a simple shadow by clicking the brush tool and changing our brush size a little bit. Then we're gonna wanna diminish the opacity of our brush, because we don't want it to be just a black hole. Like if you look at this is just black, and that's totally not realistic. So we want to get back to the previous step, and we want to change the opacity over here to about 50. And again, here you can play a bit with it and change some settings and look at if it's good for you or not. So then we want a pretty sharp shadow, because if we look at the other shadows, they're also pretty sharp, and that's why we're going to use another brush, this one, and the hardness is going to be all the way up. So we're gonna create a little bit of a shadow. It doesn't really have to be that accurate, it's just the way it gets portrayed, right? So maybe a little bit more. So by adding another layer, well, painting over it again, you can see that it changes to be more dark. And as you can see, his feet are now well, also in the shadow, which isn't really what we want. So again, we're working with these layers, and so we want to drag the shadow layer underneath the other layers, so it becomes one that's on the bottom, well, in the middle. And so yeah, as you can see, the image is now looking much more better. It's also looking much more realistic. Okay, we could have done a better job with the shadows, but then we're going a bit too far and more depth than we want to. But as you can see, it's pretty realistic. So yeah, this was pretty much it. Maybe one more last step to actually retrieve the image, which is also pretty important. You want to go to File, actually export it, and you can pretty much choose whichever option you want. So we want to click on Export As, and then it's going to load us a tab with some settings, and here we can choose all sorts of steps like the pixel density and stuff, but the most important part mostly is the formatting. So if you want to use a PNG or a JPEG, which are the two most used ones, you can choose whichever you want. And then we want to export the image. The other steps aren't that important. The other settings aren't that important. And so yeah, then you can choose wherever you want to export the image, and we want to save the image, and then we're done. So then you have the image as a PNG, and we're done. So thank you very much for listening to this commentary. I hope you learned a bit about the editing procedure, and I hope you can execute it a little bit better than I did at this point. But yeah, I hope you learned a lot, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.